In this video, I'd like to discuss why forcing creativity doesn't work, why routines kill ideas, and when you should execute your ideas. People think more work equals great results, more success, but that's not true for creative fields. If we look at music producers and how they were before they got famous and after, you can see a clear pattern. At least I noticed when I was locked into making music like a business. When I analyzed producers, I saw that when they were making music for themselves at the start, it was alive. Um, it felt unique. But when they started getting big, corporate, there was deadlines, quotas, and nobody cared if you didn't get inspired to write something. You had to meet the quotas. That's why a lot of the times they stopped producing the same way before. You even can see this in Flume when he was, I think, making his second album or third. At one point, the pressure got so much to him, he couldn't think anymore. He took a flight to Mexico and he was just sitting there he said, everybody, I don't care. Literally, he had deadlines to do the album in about 2 weeks, if I'm not wrong. And he told everybody, guys, he didn't say anybody anything. He just took a flight to Mexico and worked on this beautiful album, which I think was Skin at the end of the day. Huge album. You can look into the story, but that shows that he understood this point better than anybody. That once he didn't have this pressure with labels and everything was flowing, everything was fine. But when you bring the pressure, the overworking, you have to finish this by this deadline, blah blah blah. He noticed that he couldn't be creative until he went to Mexico and just literally was working only on music in this one cafe. That's when his ideas started to happen. The same thing applies to business and ideas in business. When you overwork, you have tunnel vision. When you have tunnel vision, you cannot come up with creative idea. The fact that creativity doesn't work under pressure, you could even say scientifically proven, because when we get stressed, and this is scientific, we start to get tunnel vision. We focus on one thing, the stressor, and until the stressor is dealt with, we cannot think in panorama. That's why one of the ways that you can reduce stress is look in the world in the panoramic type view instead of focusing on one thing, which is what stress does to you. When you get stressed, you hyper focus on one spot and you don't see the world around you. You don't see the world in panorama. So when you do this, you get less stressed. So it's scientific that stress makes us have tunnel vision. When you have tunnel vision, you cannot think outside the box, think of creative ideas. Why do you see employees in corporate environments not that creative? Is it because they're inherently not creative, or is it because they're overworked to the point where deadlines, meetings, emails, 24/7, the boss needs this, employees need this, colleagues need this, nobody respects your free time, your personal time. Everybody thinks that because you're sitting in the cubicle in this company, that means that you owe everything, every single minute, every single second. How is an employee going to be creative? The most creative individual in this environment will not be creative. That's why I left my job of 7 years. I couldn't be any more creative. And when that happens, stagnation happens. For me, that's the worst fear. And it all comes back to grinding 24/7, that if you just tunnel vision into something, the ideas don't happen. In my job, when I was at the start thinking of ways we can improve the business and do this and do that, that was interesting to me. But at a certain point, when it became just management and operations, when I just hired people who could do the operations, and I thought that now I'll finally have time to think of ideas. But actually, I just was now, instead of doing it myself, controlling the guys who were doing it and responding to their messages, their emails, their calls, their meetings, etc. So at the end of the day, it didn't help. So if grinding doesn't work, then what does? We've identified the problem. Now, what's the solution? And the solution is there's two stages. One is the idea and product stage. During this stage, you must not push yourself 24/7 to make 70 billion sketches and working without sleep. That's not going to help you. That's not. But the second stage is when you do that. The second stage is when you work hard, you lock in, you focus on this one product idea, and you take it to the masses, market it, sales, find clients, etc. Most people, they start too early on point number 2 before they have perfected the point number 1, the stage 1, which is the product, the idea. And that's, in my opinion, the most important thing. Even if you have the best sales, the best marketing, I've said this in previous videos, you cannot long-term carry a bad product. It just doesn't work. What I do during stage 1, what I used to do when I was making music, especially, was I would analyze successful producers. I would go on walks where I would just listen to music I like. And as soon as the inspiration strikes, then I would instantly turn around, go back home, start making this idea. And then that's kind of how I got inspired, breaking down how music producers made successful songs. Like Flume is a big inspiration of mine. I understood everything about how he made songs. Every single song I analyzed, I understood how he does things. And that's how you can kind of mix these things and mash into a new unique sound or product. And the same you can do with business. You start reading books about successful people who have made what you want to do, and you are bound to find some similarities or connections, things that you might be able to see that you wouldn't have otherwise. So in the morning, if you don't feel like working on this certain idea, let's put it this way, sometimes it's not the best to just push through it, but rather not pressure yourself so much. Read books, listen to podcasts, go on walks, think about things, but not, from my experience, not grind 24/7. Because when you do that, you turn into an operations officer, and that's when creativity is gone. There is no creativity in that. Once you have a product, you grind all the way. You find clients, as I said before, marketing, sales. That's when you lock in. That's when you focus. That's when, because you don't want to be the person who is just a dreamer, thinking of ideas, but never never executing anything. That's also not great. If you don't execute an idea in the first couple of days, most of the time it gets forgotten, dropped, lost, and not executed. And that's not what you want as well. So the biggest thing is execution, not only thinking of certain ideas, execution. And I remember I was listening to the Diary of a CEO with the Spotify founder, the CEO of Spotify. And what he would do oftentimes is he would basically gather people for dinner, his friends. And sometimes he would just get ideas out of nowhere during the dinner. And he would tell everybody, guys, sorry, I have to go. Sometimes he wouldn't even tell. He would just leave for a moment and then come back. And sometimes he wouldn't come back until 2, 3, 4 hours later. If an idea strikes, he acts on it immediately, and he doesn't worry about. His friends basically started accepting that that's just how he is, and I think that's exactly how you should be. If you want to make great ideas, not just have them, but also create with them, you must act on them immediately. They don't work on a schedule. You can't schedule creativity. You can that's why routines, they kill creativity, because in a routine, you know that now I have lunch, then I have a job, then I have a dinner, then I have this, blah blah blah. Where is the creativity gonna fill? The creativity happens when you're bored, when you don't have anything planned. That's when you think of creative ideas. So how is a routine going to assist that? It's not. It's going to ruin it. If I got a music idea that was good, but I never recorded it, never wrote it down, never even made like a small sketch, 90% of the time, never would revisit it. Would be lost, forgotten, gone. So if you have this, you should revisit your ideas ideally in the next couple of days, or you have to write the sketch well enough to the point where you would look back in and you would still get inspired again. If you get inspired again, that's kind of the goal. You must write it out in a way that it inspires you the same way that you got inspired the first time. And that's not easy. The easier thing is just to try to execute it in the first 48 hours. That's what I found best. 72 is pushing it, but it's acceptable. So flexibility. Once you have a routine, you lose the flexibility. And when you don't have the flexibility to immediately start working on this idea that you just got, from my experience, that's one of the biggest problems. And that's why also I left my job, as I said before. I didn't have that flexibility. If I have to respond to clients right now, I have to respond to clients right now. They cannot really wait and until I make my business idea. Whereas now I can lock and focus on something, even losing sleep, or until I get it to a point where I can say that, yeah, fine, I've started it. It has some good progress. I can finish it later. That's fine. But the first sketch, the first intro, it must be on paper, it must be done, let's put it this way. Hard work only matters when you're working on the right thing, and you don't find it by grinding, you find it by staying open and being in a relaxed state of mind and being quick to act when ideas happen. So I'm curious to know, have you guys lost ideas because you didn't act on them? Let me know in the comments and follow for more.